thanks again for helping me out with this. I appreciate it. This should only take about a half hour or so. I'd like to start off by asking you what types of skills or education that you had received prior to working for the News Dispatch.
Well, I started, skills would be typing, of course. That would be first, high school typing. And then while I was a senior in high school, I was co-editor of the school newspaper and also worked part-time for the two daily newspapers at Marion, the Morning Tribune and the Afternoon Chronicle. Started out as a sports writer and reporter, but then got away from the newspaper business for 30 years working for Western Union. Retired in 1978, and about a year and a half later got back in the newspaper business at the Michigan City News Dispatch. So the Marion Chronicle and the Tribune were both what they call hot lead newspapers. They had linotype machines with linotype operators, and as they would type on the linotype machine, it would set hot lead. And that's what they had that at that time instead of the computerized newspaper page makeup that they do now. Everything today is computerized.
So when you mentioned computers, I'll go back here. This is a question that I was going to ask you in the future, but this is a great time to bring it up right now. The computer technology, how has that affected the News Dispatch, or just the overall computer business, I should say, in the last 5 years, how would you say?
Well, of course, it has automated it to a huge extent. For instance, if you had a story back in the 40s and you typed it out on a typewriter, if you needed a copy of it, you had to insert carbon paper.
Right.
Copy machines were not heard of at that time. So now you will have your notepad and you'll have your computer, and you input your copy directly from your notepad to the computer, and that's the last time it's touched by human hands, so to speak. Computer sets the type. It has capability of printing out your stories in column form. They go right on the page. A photograph is made of the page, it's put in the press, and it's ready to go.
Well, what kind of a role does it play as far as communication goes within your organization? Do you have their own email system?
Yes, yeah, we have email, we have our own internet system. It connects all the papers, interconnects all the papers, and also with our headquarters at Peru, Indiana.
What kind of role do you see the computer technology playing in the newspaper business within the next 5 years?
Well, I think we're going to see pagination as far as ads. The ads will be made up and are being made up now on the computer. Instead of a commercial artist drawing up the ads and by manually, now they do it on the computer. They have all types of artwork stored in the computer. They can pull out and enlarge or reduce any particular piece of art, enlarge or reduce typefaces. You have the choice of typefaces in the computer, so it's pretty much done with the keyboard, and then that is transposed to the actual page, and you have a system called Quark, where the page and editorial copy also is actually placed on the page in the computer, and then a picture is taken of that by the computer and it's ready to go in the press.
The system is called Quark? Is that what
Quark.
What types of skills then and I don't know, practices have you developed since you joined the News Dispatch?
Well, we had to learn the computer technology and the programs that the computer would handle.
Did they have some kind of a training
Yeah,
program they had
yeah. Usually a computer company does the training on that.
Oh,
Whoever you buy the computers from, they'll train you on that.
And how long of a process was that?
The training process? Oh, if it was concentrated, probably a day and a half, 2 days maybe.
Oh, I see.
From then on, you had about a period of 3 to 5 days where it was trial and error until you got used to the quirks and the idiosyncrasies of whatever system it was.
So you feel then that the computer would sort of be the technology that seems to dominate the business today?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty well automated.
Leading into that then, what skills do you feel that a college graduate who's applying to, say, the News Dispatch today or any other newspaper in the United States, what skills do you think that applicant would need in order to successfully get the job done? What would you recommend?
Well, typing, of course, would be your mainstay, your prime requisite. And from then on, it's just a matter of being able to study the whatever computer technique it is you're going to be using and put it into practice.
What about like good communication skills too, being able to speak and talk?
Well, yes, depending on what department you're in, particularly classified advertising, you need to be able to speak on the phone with the customer and also in person when they come into your office to place an ad.
Are there particular skills that you feel that graduates or most applicants seem to lack these days more than ever?
We've had some applicants that had a very difficult time spelling, and believe it or not, some that had a difficult time typing also, which would be a severe handicap in today's technology. Spelling is very important.
What advice would you give to college students considering to apply for the News Dispatch?
Make sure that's the type of business they want to be in. No job is much fun if you don't like it. But it is interesting. It's always changing. A newspaper has a new product every day when you stop and think about it. Yesterday's newspaper is history. You have to come up with a new one every day. As things are happening, ads are changing. There'll be a sale tomorrow that wasn't on today. You have to tell the public about it. Advertising is news also, just like editorial copy.
If somebody makes the comment that working for a newspaper, being a journalist, is an 8 to 5 job, what do you say to that?
Not if you want to be a success at it, and that includes advertising and editorial. It's pretty obvious a good reporter is not going to consider himself on a 8 to 5 job, because news happens constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Same thing could be said about advertising. If you're going to keep in contact with your customers, there may be times that the person you need to see to clarify or to get an ad might not be in until in the evening, or he might be there at 6:30 in the morning, or he may not be in until Saturday afternoon. So if you need to do that type of business, you have to be flexible.
In what ways would you consider your job in the past, the route that you followed, how would you say that has been highly stressful?
When we have problems with the computers, everything grinds to a stop. Of course, you have mechanical problems with presses also. Anything man-made is subject to Murphy's Law, so anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Do you have an example of something going wrong with the computers?
Well, power failure.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
you
guess that would be.
you have a storm, you can have a power failure, and then if your work isn't backed up, you start over from scratch. Hopefully you can find your notes so you can start over.
I was wondering if you could describe for me some of the numerous tasks, some of the jobs that you've had while you've been with the News Dispatch, some of the different things that you've had to do.
Well, I started out in late 70s with a farm newspaper that they started up. It was called the Mishawaka Farmers Journal, and went to every farm in a 12-county area, 25 acres or more. And we covered geography from Kentland, Indiana to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Published the paper every 2 weeks, and it was an agribusiness farm paper, and it was a great help for the implement dealers, auctioneers, grain dealers, fruit farmers, cattle breeders. It was a great marketing tool for those types of individuals. When the farm economy got in trouble in the early 80s, we suspended that. And then I went into the daily paper as outside advertising salesman. After that, we wanted to set up a telemarketing department. And I was sent to San Diego for a training seminar on telemarketing. And we did a little reconstruction inside the office and ended up with 3 booth-like areas. And we had people with the telemarketing department on the telephones from those 3 booths. And it was quite successful. Then soon after that, I was asked to go into classified advertising, and on a short temporary basis, but it turned into several years. And it was very interesting. It's still advertising. Advertising is news, but classified is more individualized or personalized. It's when the individual has something they want to sell or buy, for that matter, and you deal one-on-one with them, either in person or over the phone. And of course, results is the bottom line. If they have something they want to sell, your ad needs to help them sell it. If they have something they want to buy, your ad should help them to find it.
Are there certain things that you keep in mind when you design an ad? What do you try and do to grab?
Try to be as descriptive as you can of whatever. If it's a car being sold, you try to get all the information in that will sell the car. You do a selling job in writing, actually. In a display type ad, same thing applies. Who, what, why, where, and when. And again, advertising is news. And so you try to get all the information in. I always try to pre-sell the reader. I always try to use type large enough where you may not have to go hunt up your glasses to read the ad to get the information.
Right.
Things like that make it easy for the reader. Number one, to get the reader's attention. Whatever you can do in the ad to catch the reader's eye, because if the ad isn't read, it doesn't do the customer a bit of good.
In your dealings individually, while you've been in classifieds, are there any interesting stories you can share?
Well, yeah, there's something new every day there. Particularly in our part of the state, you deal with accents that are very hard to understand over the phone or in person, for that matter. You try your best to prevent any kind of misunderstandings. And well, sometimes you run into a situation where certain individuals take advantage of your credit policies and try to run ads, and then you won't be able to find them when it comes time to pay the bill, but you have that in several businesses.
Well, you've been in classifieds. What have you enjoyed the most about it? Is there a particular something that does stand out that you do like about it?
Well, just the variety, I would say. Just the variety of the type of transactions that you have.
That every day is different.
Every ad is different. One minute you might be dealing with a lost pet. The next time somebody wants to sell a $300,000 house. Next ad might be for an automobile. Next ad might be some personal ad, a Lonely Hearts type of ad, somebody looking for a companion. It just goes from from A to Z, you name it, and just a little of everything.
Any particular odd ads that you ever see?
Well, yes. Of course, you have to be kind of a censor too. the newspaper can decline to take ad that isn't of what we might call a legitimate nature. You have to watch some words that people want to put in ads. You have to explain to them that your paper doesn't print that type of language and different things, but that's just part of it.
In what ways do you feel that the company has attempted to increase employee satisfaction or morale? Do you feel that the News Dispatch holds any sort of functions or any sort of...
We have a Christmas, usually have a Christmas party for employees, and that usually includes like an awards for a number of years that you've been employed, 10, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And they have usually once a week, they circulate like an inside newsletter, keeping the employees informed of what's going on inside the plant.
Coming off of that answer I just said, do you think that what do you feel the company could work on to help employee morale if you feel that it is somewhat?
Oh, well, I think that's probably universal. More compensation, fewer hours, but more flexible hours. But basically, when the economy is good like it is now versus the way it was 12, 15 years ago, it's not too hard to keep employees happy versus the downsizing and layoffs that were seen in the economy 10, 12 years ago.
Do you know how old the News Dispatch is? Out of curiosity.
News Dispatch is probably was a combination of two newspapers, probably in the early 30s. So it's about 65 years old.
In what ways do you think that the News Dispatch strives to successfully serve its clients and its subscribers?
We have state-of-the-art photography. We have some very good reporters. We have some reporters who know the town. In the newspaper slang, reporters know where the bones are buried. This comes only with longevity, with seniority, knowing the people, knowing the town, being able to help young reporters who don't have that knowledge. It's a big advantage. What was the other part of the question?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, which
What a newspaper should be doing
yeah,
to serve the readers?
Yeah, in what ways do you feel that your company has successfully, in what ways do you feel that they're successful?
Being a, so I would say, billboard for the advertising community, being a place where merchants and businessmen can advertise what they have to sell to the public, and how the public will benefit from those types of products. On the other side, the news content of the newspaper keeps people advised of what's happening in the city, in their neighborhood, in the county, the state, country, and of course international news also. Which brings up a saying that an old newspaper editor that I used to know said what purpose of a newspaper is. He would define the purpose of a newspaper, and his definition was to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And you stop and think about it, that does sell newspapers.
In what way do you feel that they could strengthen what they do? I mean, do you feel that they're
in the news side, describe and show both sides of any given argument, so the readers can make up their own mind which they think is right. unless it's something that's of a urgent moral nature or legal nature, probably a newspaper will not editorialize. In other words, take one side against another side. They're probably better off to just print both sides of an argument and let the reader decide in his own mind which side would be right. This happens a lot of time in government reporting. The government or administration will want to do something, and the opposition will say it's the wrong thing to do, so it's up to the public to make up their own mind.
The fairness doctrine sort of somewhat used to say that all issues of a certain story had to be covered, and then eventually, how do you feel about the fairness doctrine?
Well, I think that was mainly in radio and television. It doesn't really, I think, doesn't really apply to newspapers. They will naturally try to cover both sides of an argument. Yeah, and if they decide that they want to make their point more poignant, then they can get an ad, pay for an ad, and explain their side of it. And if the opposition wants to do the same thing and elaborate on their side, they can do that too.
Has the News-Dispatch ever done anything like that, where they've taken?
We've just recently had a situation due to some storms. The utility company, NIPSCO, was brought to task by the newspaper for long outages of the customers. And coincidentally, at the same time, their workers' union, the union contract expired, and there was a long delay in a settlement. So the union members joined in the criticism of the company and claimed that they were trying to downsize their workforce. And the paper took a pretty middle of the road angle on that, trying to cover both sides of it. But it ended up, NIPSCO attacked the newspaper, claiming they were biased, and the newspaper, of course, denied it. And, well, I guess the bottom line is the company, NIPSCO company, bought a full-page ad to explain their side of the argument. So it degenerated probably into profit for the paper in the revenue they got from the full-page ad.
Are there any particular threats that you see confronting the News-Dispatch in the near future?
Not particularly, as long as they do their job on informing the public, doing their job as a news reporting entity, and do the job on handling the advertising. There is competition. A lot of people think that a newspaper in a town is a monopoly. Well, it isn't. You have radio, you have television, all of those are news outlets and advertising outlets. A newspaper is in competition every day with their product. One thing that one cost a newspaper has that radio and television don't have is the always increasing price of newsprint. These big rolls of paper that make up your paper, the price keeps going up on those.
Do you foresee a time possibly when they stop with newspapers altogether and just go right onto the internet?
It's very, well, this has been talked about a long time, about you receive your newspaper on a machine right at home, whether it be a machine similar to a facsimile, or it could be a computer with a printout that you would get. But still, it doesn't, the mechanics of actually doing that would need a considerable amount of work. You stop and figure how many stories are in the average newspaper and the average number of ads in the newspaper. And if you have that in your home, it's going to cost, there'll be a cost involved in getting that to you. Now, who's going to pay for it? Do you want to pay for it, or do you want the newspaper to pay for it? And if you want the newspaper to pay for it, where are they going to get their money from? It may happen someday, but I think it's a few years down the road.
If you could sort of do it all over again, what would you do differently? If you could just go back to the beginning when you were at, before you even started working for Western Union, if you had a shot at it, would you get into journalism?
Probably not. Technology in other fields has advanced so far, so fast, that if I had it to do it over, I think I would probably get into, well, I think I probably would enjoy being a pilot, for one thing. Probably 6 or 8 different things that if I had to do it over, I'd probably do differently.
What kind of outlook do you see for college graduates and applicants who are looking for a job in this business? Do you see a lot of openings?
Well, natural turnover will create a lot of openings. Here again, the promise of automation by computers, I don't feel has really resulted in fewer jobs. I really haven't seen any reduction in employment due to automation. Maybe a few here or there, but nothing like was feared when this equipment first came on the market. I think probably just natural turnover. There'll be opportunities for that, and there probably always will be some type of a news outlet and an advertising outlet, but may not be a newspaper as we know it now, but in some form the information will be distributed, the news will be distributed, the ads will be distributed. I think it's a newspaper job is an important job. It takes an educated public to maintain a free society. You have to know what's going on in the world around you. You need to know what your representatives and your lawmakers who represent you are doing. Make sure if you disagree with anything that your government is doing that you make it known to them. But you must know what they're doing at the same time. Newspaper is a watchdog also. They keep an eye on your government, on your elected officials. That's something that in most cases radio, television, cable can't do. They don't have the time to spend on it. They just have bits and bytes of news, very condensed, more or less headline type. But to get to the real information and get into depth on any particular issue that might affect you as a taxpayer or as a citizen, you really need to get into the in-depth type of reporting that a newspaper provides.
Interesting. Getting back to the technological side of it, when we talked about the internet possibly one day taking over, I guess in this sense, I guess in this sense then that there's always going to be that skill for having to be a reporter. I mean, because even if it does get put on the internet, you still have to go out and get to know the town after a couple of years. So there's always going to be that skill.
Yeah, and included in that skill is the skill of asking questions and having enough knowledge ahead of time to know when you're being sloughed off with some answer that it doesn't quite jive with the facts as you know them. And that's part of the skill of being a good reporter, of knowing where the bones are buried, in other words.
Pull certain information out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you feel that you'd like to say that we haven't touched upon? Is there any message that you'd like to give, perhaps?
Well, would you like to subscribe to my paper?